Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Brothers channel, and today I'm going to be doing a versus video between the Nike PG5 and the Nike Kyrie 7. So the PG5 is going for 110 bucks, so pretty much budget price. The Kyrie 7 is going for 130 bucks. That's around like I guess mid-tier pricing. So if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I'll leave a link in the description box. But Paul George versus Kyrie's signature shoe, let's see which one is better. So let's get it started off with the Tracciones, right? So I played only outdoors in both of these shoes, so I'm sorry about that, but the PG5 has a better traction, right? So the traction for the PG5 is just way more consistent. The bite is always really good. I never slipped out in it, and I had no problems at all, ever. The Kyrie 7, on the other hand, I mean, okay, so it was good, but then it was a little inconsistent, just a little bit, you know, on some like hard lateral movements, it would slide out just a little bit. So that kind of sucked, but for the most part, it was still really good. Also, another plus of the Kyrie 7 is the outsole curvature. You know, it is a very mellow curved shape as far as the outsole curvature goes here in the Kyrie 7, as opposed to like, you know, the Kyrie 2, the Kyrie 3, the Kyrie 4. So that kind of sucks, but you know, you still get this nice curved shape here, and you get the outsole like basically coming up all the way here into the medial side, so you get more grip when you're doing like crossovers and stuff like that. So that's a nice little added bonus, but it's not a huge deal. I mean, the PG4, the outsole kind of still wraps around, and you don't have that shape as much, and the PG5 is just better for traction performance. As far as durability goes, they're both terrible, and Nike always gives us crappy durability for their shoes for some reason. They just want us to buy more shoes. Obviously, people need to buy shoes again quickly, so I guess it's a good business model, but it's terrible for the consumers, especially if you're playing on outdoor court. So the PG5 is terrible, it's absolutely terrible, and the Kyrie 7 is absolutely terrible as well. I mean, I had to buy 2 freaking pairs of this. The Kyrie 7 was just so bad, it was ripping off, that the first pair I bought, I chopped in half because I literally couldn't play it anymore, and I bought a new pair, which is this one. PG5, probably the same thing. I mean, the PG5 was terrible too, and I really don't want to buy another pair of these. I mean, these are nice, but oh man, I'm just spending a whole lot of money. It's been kind of rough lately, but anyways, so durability, if you're playing on outdoor court, don't get either of these shoes. As far as the heel to toe transition goes, they're both pretty damn smooth. You got a nice curved shape here in the heel for both of them. The PG5 actually has a little bit more heel compression, which feels nicer. The Kyrie 7 doesn't really have all too much. As far as the shape here in the forefoot goes though, the Kyrie 7 feels a little bit better, right? So if you put a little bit more weight here in the forefoot, it propels you forward, and that feels super nice. The PG5, it doesn't do that as much, but you have a lot more forefoot flex. Look at that. It's just super flexible here in the PG5 for the forefoot. The Kyrie 7, not as much. So it all depends on what you like. For me personally, the shape isn't terrible here in the forefoot for the PG5, and I like the extra flexible forefoot. So I would have to say the PG5 feels a little bit more smooth and a little bit more fluid when you're running down the court. So as far as the cushioning setup goes, they're pretty different. So for the PG5, they're using the Air Dot Weld Strobel board. I'm gonna just call it the Air Strobel unit because that's basically what it is, and it feels pretty nice. You know, not as much compression, it's not as soft as the PG4, but you still do feel something. As opposed to the Kyrie 7, you only get that here in the forefoot. You know, you get that forefoot zoom turbo unit, which feels nice. Obviously it's bouncier and all that. I would say it's around the same amount of compression because the zoom unit and the Air Strobel unit is probably the same like thickness, but it's just bouncier in the forefoot for the Kyrie 7. But also you have a Strobel board like on top of the zoom unit, right? So it's a little bit harder to feel as opposed to the PG5, which is like your foot's pretty much right on top of the Air Strobel unit. So for me personally, I would say I like the PG5 better, but of course, if you want like a bouncier unit and you want like that bouncy sensation in the forefoot, the Kyrie 7 is better for that. As far as the foam goes, the PG5 is just way softer. There's way more compression. The Kyrie 7, I mean, I don't know what it is. Kyrie, please use a softer foam or something like that, you know. The Kyrie Low 3 though, the Kyrie Low 3, if you guys didn't notice, I believe it was like Cushlon or something, full length Cushlon from the leak. So I'm super excited about that, but yeah, the Kyrie 7, it's not great. So also the PG5 has better court feel, better impact protection, and it just feels a little bit more comfortable like throughout the entire foot. So for me personally, I would have to say the PG5 is better. All right, as far as the materials go, so the materials in both of the shoes are really crappy, right? So when you feel it, I mean, I would say the PG5 feels a lot more flimsy and a lot cheaper at first, right? So the Kyrie 7, it doesn't feel like as cheap, I would say, at first. But then once you break both of them in, I mean, they're both super duper thin, like really thin and very minimal, especially here in the toe box, and it stays very thin and minimal throughout this entire midfoot, even all the way here into the ankle area. So I mean, I guess like for 110 bucks and 130 bucks from Nike, you can't really expect like top tier, top quality materials from Nike, right? So yeah, you're not really getting any of that, but on foot it feels very thin, it conforms to your foot, it's soft, it's supportive and all that, so you can't really complain as far as the performance goes. For the tongue, I would say they both have around the same amount of padding, and then here in the ankle area, I'd say they have around the same amount of padding. So materials, I would actually tie it up, which is pretty interesting. They both get the job done on foot. All right, moving on to the fit. I went true to size for both of the shoes and they both fit me very well. I would say the Kyrie fits me a little bit better though, because I like to have a very snug fit. And the here in the toe box is just extremely like snug. It's to the point where like I can't even curl my toes up. The PG5, I can curl my toes up. So it's a little bit more roomy. It's not to the point where it's super uncomfortable, because I like to have a snug fit in my ball shoes usually. But I would say the Kyrie 7 is a little bit better for me. If you like to have a roomier fit or you have like a wide foot, probably the PG5 is a little bit better. And if you like to have a snug fit, the Kyrie 7 is a little bit better. As far as the width goes, I would say they're around the same. You know, the Kyrie 7 is pretty narrow and the PG5 is pretty narrow. And then as far as like putting on the shoe, the ease of putting it on, the PG5 is a little bit easier because of this heel tab. The Kyrie 7, I mean, obviously the heel tab comes up just as much, but it's a mid cut, so it's a little bit harder to put the Kyrie 7 on foot. So there's a little bit of a difference there, I guess. All right, moving on to support and lockdown. Support and lockdown was good for me in both of the shoes. I mean, if you want total support and like you just want your foot to be locked in, the Kyrie 7 I would say is better, right? In the forefoot, you have this plastic clip, you have the foam coming up, you have an internal TPU heel counter, you have these like finger things that'll also like cage you for lateral containment. The PG5, I had no issues, right? But I would say the material is like a little bit more soft, you know, because here in the Kyrie 7 you have all this like plastic and you have this rubber outsole kind of like coming up a lot with the glue, so it doesn't allow the material to move as much, you know what I'm saying? But for the PG5 you don't really have that as much, so it kind of like rolls over on itself a little bit more than the Kyrie 7. So for lateral containment, the Kyrie 7 is just a little bit better, even though I had no issues with the PG5. As far as the lateral stability goes, let's see which one's wider. It's pretty much the same. I had no issues with lateral instability with either of the shoes. And the Kyrie 7, I mean, it didn't have the best ankle support, but if you tighten the last two eyelets pretty tight, you got a little bit of ankle movement restriction. So if you want that, the Kyrie 7 is a little bit better for that. All right, as far as the weight goes, I mean, the Kyrie 7 is super light, especially for a Kyrie. 12.1 ounces, but the PG5 is just extremely light, 10.72 ounces. So if you want the overall lighter shoe and more minimal feeling shoe, get the PG5. I mean, both of these shoes, when you're playing them, you feel very quick, but I would say the PG5 just feels a little bit more responsive because it has better, you know, better traction, and the support and all that is still good. But the Kyrie 7 is still very responsive shoe to play in. All right, as far as the ventilation goes, I would say they're both pretty good. Maybe the PG5 is a little bit better because of the mid cut here in the Kyrie 7. But I mean, as far as the materials go, they don't allow for a lot of airflow, but then they are super thin, so they wick away moisture and all that. So ventilation, they're both pretty good, but then I guess because of this extra material here in the ankle, the PG5 is a little bit better. As far as the aesthetics go, Kyrie 7 for me. And the Kyrie 7, especially that ray gun colorway, it looks dope. The PG5, it's growing on me a little bit more, but for me personally, I like the Kyrie 7 better. So tell us what you guys think looks better down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, personally for me, what shoe will I play in? The PG5. The PG5 cushion is better, traction is better, material, they're both but get the job done on foot. Support, they're both good for me. even though I said the Kyrie 7 is a little bit better for support, and the PG5 is also lighter and more minimal. So yeah, I mean, the PG5 is super nice. The Kyrie 7 is still nice, but then I feel like the PG5 is just better, and it's also cheaper. So yeah, that about wraps it up for this versus video. I would 100% recommend the PG5. If you don't want to get the PG5 and you want the Kyrie 7, you can definitely make the Kyrie 7 work, but just know that the PG5 is a little bit better for performance. But anyways, again, if you guys want to cop either of these shoes, I'll leave links below. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.